Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanders and Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics. Today we have John Miller, who's running for Nevada's Lieutenant Governor. But before we get to John, Jim, do you have any rants?
Yeah, actually I do. So it just happened today. I had an incident, not an incident myself, but I was in a convenience store. And
was it convenient?
Oh, it was kind of eye-opening. I don't know, there was something about the experience that kind of triggered me. So this kid was misbehaving, right? And the parent is like pleading with the kid to be quiet, and we're talking like a 10-year-old, right? So she's like, "Oh, okay, whatever you want." And so she goes to buy a slushie. She didn't like that flavor.
Was it a white parent?
I'm getting to it.
All right, this is gonna be good.
So the child wanted a slushie, and the parent's like, "Okay, well, what flavor?" Well, I want to test each one and see which one I like. And the poor convenience store clerk, there's like 10 people in the store at this time. She's all by herself. So she's like literally trying to do the best she can to cater to this parent. It's trying to cater to her child. So, and kept going back and forth. And finally, like, she spent like 10 minutes. And the clerk was very nice. And so it kind of made me think of like my childhood. So if I were to ask, and in case anybody didn't notice, I happen to be white.
Really?
Yeah. If I ask for a Slurpee, if my dad was willing to actually buy me a Slurpee, and I said I want whatever flavor, and he bought it for me, that was it. Like, you were either getting that Slurpee or you're not getting that Slurpee. There was no testing each flavor or anything like that. So I thought it was interesting because then the mother and the child leave. And the other gentleman goes, "Man, when I was a kid, that wasn't allowed."
Right.
White people are just too easy on their kids. I'm like, okay.
See, now you know where I was coming from.
So I was like, okay, fair enough. But you also are talking to somebody who has been involved, worked in the grocery industry and the retail industry for 20 plus years. And I've seen really bad behaving kids of all races, all colors. And so the moral to the story is there's good parents, there's bad parents, there's good kids, there's bad kids. I think we need to get over this whole white, black, ethnicity stuff. Like, if you're a bad behaving kid,
you're just a bad behaving kid.
Yeah, or maybe you just have bad parents. Like, I know,
used to slap the crap out of mine,
You know, and well, here's the thing. Like, I'm not defending, and I do agree with.
We weren't going to do no testing either.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with. Yeah, I have noticed that it tends to be a cultural thing with the way individuals discipline their kids, and I fully understand that. But I think we've gotten to a point where it's like, I know a lot of kids that are non-white that have had extremely strict parents that literally were really hard on them, and they grew up to be assholes as adults. And I've seen and I've seen it in all spectrums. So I think what we need to do as a country and as a society is realize bad is bad, good is good, and quit breaking it down into colors and ethnicities and realize that we're all Americans. And the reason why I bring that up is specifically dealing with politics. Not all Democrats are bad. Not all Republicans are good. Okay?
And vice versa.
So, exactly. So, like, just take the time to understand what's going on with that particular person. If you have one bad experience, then don't say, okay, all of these people are bad.
Yeah.
If you have one bad experience, all of these people are not bad, and vice versa. They're not all good, they're not all bad.
Gotcha.
So I think we need to start really seriously getting back to that. And it's starting to really get frustrating to me.
Okay.
That's rough, but I'm allowed to, I assume, interrupt your rant.
Not really.
But I'm not. My youngest is autistic, and so we go in places sometimes, and we never know what's going to set him off.
Right.
And so it's difficult, to really know whether it's a parenting issue or a kid issue, and so you have to be. I agree with what you said. We have to treat everybody the same, but we also have to realize we don't know everyone's situation.
Right.
And so, we have to be sensitive to the fact that you can't see, if somebody has a learning disability or is autistic and doesn't process information the same way. So it's a challenge. But I get your point.
So, John, who are you?
Who am I? I'm John Miller. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. I was born and raised in Las Vegas, one of 7 kids. And
Are you the youngest?
I was the youngest boy. I have a little sister.
Okay.
So 3 brothers and 3 sisters. So
Keep going with the Bible.
I went to Catholic school, St. Vitus, down on Flamingo and Eastern, and then went to Bishop Gorman High School. Graduated from Bishop Gorman High School and got accepted to Notre Dame. Okay. Spent 3 years in Notre Dame.
Football?
I did not play football. I fenced. I was a varsity athlete.
You fenced?
Yeah,
That's
at Notre Dame. Yeah, fenced epee for 2 years. We got second place at NCAA tournament, so that was exciting. Wish we could have won, but graduated early in 3 years and came back home. Looked at job offers in Houston and San Francisco, Chicago, and decided to come home and go a different route. Didn't want to go to a big city and a big investment bank, and decided to work for a family office in Nevada.
Okay. Family office, what type of?
Family offices are, I guess the best way to say it is a wealthy family that kind of manages their own money. And so instead of hiring out, they hire someone inside and kind of do their own analysis. Okay. And so I worked with them for...
I wish I had that problem.
Yeah.
You want to manage my money, Jim?
Yeah. It's not as easy as you think, right?
You know darn well you don't want me managing your money.
So it was neat. I got to work, and that's kind of how I learned investing. And actually, we had a portfolio of bank stocks.
So you're a stockbroker?
No, I'm not a stockbroker. I was a registered investment advisor.
Okay.
And when I worked for the family office, and then ultimately did that, and then 2008 happened. We had a lot of banks in the portfolio. Right. It was an interesting time. In 2000, all the banks had to file all their stuff electronically, and they used to file it by paper. So it was a really neat opportunity. We had an amazing run. 2008 happened, and I started going on the bank boards and being more active, being an active investor, trying to save institutions. So it was a really exciting time. I love community banking and what it does for communities, keeping deposits local and reinvested in businesses in their community.
So, Jim, have you heard of John Miller running for Lieutenant Governor?
Well, no, I was going to actually ask you that because I'm like, and this is nothing against you. I just think it's amazing how many people are running for Lieutenant Governor. There's almost as many people running for, well, there might even be more running for Lieutenant Governor than governor.
No, so we didn't beat the governor, but there's a lot.
So is this the first time you've ever run for office?
This is the first time I've ever run for office.
Okay, so why did you just randomly decide Lieutenant Governor?
Well, I think the job is fitting for my experience in my working career. At the end of the day, I believe the lieutenant governor's job is really about economic development, about transitioning what's taking place in the legislature and the executive branch, and really pairing that off with how do we get the right kind of businesses to come to Nevada. And so, as a I say banker, and people sometimes misunderstand that, but as someone that worked in banking, what you're really doing is you're lending community businesses money to be able to accomplish their goals. And I believe, there's a public partnership with businesses in our state about what makes a difference and why they decide to come here. And I think my background really allows that conversation to take place and really drive businesses we don't have and create diversity in our economic system that kind of is lacking. Where you look at our surrounding states, and we're the only state that's in the 50s in terms of diversity economically. We go just 100 miles away to Utah, and they're 97% diverse. So, that's I truly believe it's a lack of attention by our elected officials, and so I decided that was the right spot for me to go to make a difference in that.
Do you know the job description of a lieutenant governor?
I do. You mean the constitutional one?
The Constitution.
Yes. So you've got.
And you could give us the liberal one too, since you brought up Constitution.
I'll give the 5 basic job descriptions. You are you're the president of the state Senate, so you gavel in the Senate.
Right.
It's not clear in the Constitution whether or not you get to vote in a tie. I believe you do.
You do.
But I don't believe it's clear either. So it's an interesting aspect,
okay.
And it hasn't happened in all the research I did in Nevada history. So
there hasn't been a tie.
There hasn't been a tie that at least was recorded as such, and that the lieutenant governor voted to break it. The next job is that you are in charge of the emergency preparedness for the state, which
so
I think
Homeland
is,
Security.
Yep.
Okay.
And then there's 3 what I would call kind of part-time jobs of the office.
Yeah.
And then I believe there's 3 jobs that really aren't part-time. One is that you're the chair for the Commission on Tourism in our state, which is obviously one of the reasons we're not very economically diverse. Tourism is a big part of who we are as a state.
Yeah.
So that's a big role. You sit you're the vice chair technically of the tourism board. And then the last one is kind of something that changed recently. So Sandoval took, the lieutenant governor used to be on the Board of Economic Development, and Sandoval took that and it actually became GOED, which is the Governor's Office of Economic Development. And traditionally, and since that time, the lieutenant governor has sat as a member on that board. And then they've created some new things. You also kind of sit as a component of that economic development hat. You're in charge of small business relations.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, there's one more.
What, did I miss one? What did I miss?
What happens if something happens to the governor?
Well, see,
Are you ready to be governor?
You don't really technically have that responsibility until it happens.
It can.
Well, yeah, it can, but you don't have it.
And
right?
it has happened in different states.
It has,
Yeah.
but you don't. That's not a job function until it actually exists.
But
So
if it does exist,
if it does exist, you take the roles of the governor. You do not become the governor, which is also an interesting aspect of our state constitution. Governors are always elected, which is, I think, a great thing. So you take on the responsibilities and duties.
But you have the responsibility and the title.
So actually, you kind of, it's not clear that you would actually get the title of
Well,
governor.
if something happens to the governor,
You'd be acting governor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
you're acting governor.
Acting
Yeah.
governor is not the same thing as governor. You wouldn't be Governor Miller. You'd be acting Governor Miller. It's different.
And there's nobody going to put acting in front of that.
Well, I think it's
And you still have the same authority and the same responsibility and the same job description and the same.
And I would happily step up and I believe I could perform the functions of governor. I'd like to think that that doesn't happen, but if it need be, I definitely think I have the capabilities to do it. I think my background of being a CEO and dealing with both large and small businesses is a perfect example of handling that.
So you mentioned that one of the job description is to the economic development. Do you know what the state budget is?
In total?
In total.
I don't off the top of my head.
Okay. Do you know what bills the state pays?
What bills the state pays?
From the county treasurer. From the state treasurer
Yes, I mean, I'm aware of what, I've looked through the budget, yes.
Okay, well, tell us.
Maybe a little bit more specific in what sense?
Do you know what bills the state pay through the state treasurer?
Off the top of my hand, no. I know. I mean, yes, I know the functioning of the state, what the money's collected in taxes, and how they're spent. They're spent on a lot of different aspects of what's required.
Do you know what's in the general fund?
Currently?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Do you know what happened to the marijuana money that's supposed to be for teachers' education?
Well, that's an interesting thing. You know, it's a shame that took place the way it did. An offsetting of the money that we collected in taxes in the general fund versus moving that money is directed to education. That's an issue of both. You know, all of our elected officials since that money's been collected. But really, you know, at the end of the day, you know, our state treasurer really has the responsibility of managing that. The governor definitely could have spoken up and talked about it. But at the end of the day, I believe that was really driven by the state treasurer. So.
Do you know, since the lieutenant governor sits on the Homeland Security Board, do you know what the protocol is for an emergency? What
current protocol for the state?
Yes.
I have not reviewed the current protocol for the state.
Okay. Do you so you don't know exactly what the protocol is?
I looked through it. I don't know it off the top of my head. I mean,
well, when you look through it, what did you find?
I find that there's a set of procedures that go into play, giving the lieutenant governor acting control of carrying out, depending on what it is. So just like
what would be a normal set in procedures for that type of situation?
Well, can you give maybe we'll go through. Let's talk through a standard situation. So maybe you could give an example of one.
You give me one.
Okay. Let's say. There is a threat to the United States, and Hoover Dam is targeted.
And you know, one of the reasons why I brought this up is because they made a threat. The Russians made a threat about sending a missile to our nuclear facility. Did you hear about that in the news?
I did not hear about that in the news.
So they made a threat about sending a missile to our nuclear facility, which is about 65 miles away from Las Vegas.
I heard they made a threat about a tactical thing. So something along the lines. I didn't actually hear him call out either the Nevada test site or Yucca Mountain.
It was called out. So I'll give you that as an example. So as a lieutenant governor and you sit on the Homeland Security, what would be the protocol that you would have to put into play to prevent, or if that does happen, what would you do? Well, would you evacuate? What would you do? Would you have martial law? What would you do?
I think the very first telephone call is to the federal government. You know, you're obviously working in concert with Homeland Security as well as Department of Defense. You obviously want to assure the state of Nevada that you're having those conversations and activating our emergency preparedness. I think the first telephone conversation is understanding what the federal government expects us as a state to do in regards to this. That is directly a federal issue. It involves multiple things. So I'd work with my counterparts at the federal level.
So as a chair of Homeland Security, what state law enforcement falls under your purview?
I don't know, actually. I'm not sure that...
Should have been easy, like Highway Patrol, the National Guard. Come on now, John Miller, you ready for Lieutenant Governor?
I think it's...
And the reason why I'm going to be so hard on you, I've never heard of you.
Okay.
At all until last week. Are you a member of the county party?
I am.
When did that happen?
When I registered, when I turned 18.
You remember the county party?
Oh, member of the county party.
Yeah.
I joined at the beginning of the year.
Okay, are you a member of the state party?
I registered as a Republican the day I registered to vote, and I haven't. But
you're not actively involved.
I'm not. Have not.
So let me ask you something. If you're not actively involved, how are you going to ask Republicans that are to vote for you?
I think you tell them what you're going to stand for and the fact that you can support the platform.
And what does John Miller stand for?
John Miller stands for I'm a family man. I think that Nevada is a precious state that has come under single party rule, and that single party rule has enacted a lot of laws over the past 5 to 10 years that have really had a massive impact, not just on the business community, but on the freedoms of all Nevadans. And so I decided to get more involved than just being a voter, and put my name into the hat because I think I can make a difference. Okay. And I think, you talk a lot about...
how would you make this difference?
I'll answer that question, but can I just finish?
Sure.
I think there's a lot of focus on, being involved in the parties and being a politician, and I think there's a big problem with that too, because I do think you get wrapped up into this concept of no individual think. And I think there's a danger in that aspect of electing politicians that simply don't have their own ideas. And so I look forward to answering the second part of that question, but I think that's a danger of we get politicians that fall into, hey, I've raised money, I have all these constituents that support me, and then therefore they take that into how they act in office. And I think there's a danger to that versus electing someone that really approaches each individual situation as what it is. And so I think that can be dangerous.
Why do you say that?
Well, groupthink I think is dangerous.
Group thinking is dangerous?
Yeah, I do. I think it's dangerous. I think you need to be able to elect individuals that aren't just party line followers, that are able to say, I support the party, and then are able to explain when.
But you need the party to get out of the primary, right?
Yeah,
Without
absolutely.
the party, you can't make it out of primary, so you could kiss the general goodbye.
Yeah.
So you still need the party to get out of
I'm a
primary.
Republican. That's why you would support me.
Because?
Because I'm a Republican.
Okay.
And I'm the best candidate for the job.
And why is that? You're the best candidate for the job.
I am.
How many of them you said they were, Jim?
Huh?
How many of them you said they were running for lieutenant?
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
I think there's 6.
6.
Yeah.
And what makes you the best out of all the rest? That'd be a good shirt, right?
Yeah. We didn't get back to your other part of the question, but I think that all of the other candidates have different strengths. So I'm not saying any of them are necessarily unqualified to do the job.
Okay.
But I think that someone coming from a business standpoint, a highly regulated standpoint like banking, really can understand a way to make effective change in diversifying our economy. And I do believe that's the biggest job for the lieutenant governor, and be something that I'm focused on during the next 4 years of driving those kind of business and diversifications in our economy.
Have you been visiting the states? The counties?
I have.
And have you been to Winnemucca?
We go to Winnemucca this weekend. Okay. Or the next couple of days.
Right.
But yeah, I only missed one of the Lincoln Day events. And I had an event for my daughter.
Was this the first time you've been to the Lincoln Day dinners?
It is. As I said, is my first foray into politics.
Okay. And how do you feel? Do you feel that you have a substantial chance of winning?
I do.
Do you feel people know who you are?
I think that's always the biggest challenge, right? The biggest challenge is creating name ID. Obviously, some of the other candidates have run for offices before, and so they have some name ID. Okay. I think I have the right message, and I think I really do think my background is different enough, and I can say, I identify as a different individual and create that name ID by TV ads and digital ads and talking.
Are you doing that right now?
I believe all my ads start going live on obviously I'm doing some things, but I have a TV ads going live later this week.
Besides the money that you put in your race, how much have other people put in your race?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Total ballpark. I'm sure you know what the CNE is.
I don't.
Come on, you got to have an idea.
I think over 150,000.
Okay. How much have you put in the race?
Currently, right around 330,000.
So you really believe in this lieutenant governor seat?
I did, and I'm going to put some more of my money in as I continue to buy ads.
I'm a little skeptical of people that I don't know that jumps in races, so that's why I'm asking all these questions.
Fair enough. I like all your questions. I like all your questions.
I'm not the jolly round guy that just votes because, a nice smile, good conversation. I'm just not that guy.
Good.
I need to know a little bit more what you're going to do. What are you going to do for veterans being a lieutenant governor?
Well, I don't know if there's something that sticks out in particular in any one instance.
You ever thought about it?
I think that, in a certain sense, I think one of the things that I'd like to do with the state is create a fund that allows banks access to state deposits. So they're not funding the loans, but they are, in a sense, creating the opportunity for banks, state banks, to access deposits to go make loans within a set criteria. I think that minorities, veterans, hitting certain qualifications within that spectrum for small business loans is something that could have a lot of traction, and I think it's something that's important to our community. I understand that because I'm a banker, and I realize that having access to deposits is a way of committing to them. And the nice thing about the state's deposits would actually be going back into our own communities to fund veteran-run businesses, minority-run businesses, et cetera. So that would be one example of how I think veterans would benefit.
So you're a banker?
Yeah, I've started community banks. Yeah.
How come you're not running for controller or treasurer, maybe?
It's funny. I think a lot of people do ask me that question.
You got a financial background.
I think that the controller is an interesting position in general, and if you were to ask me, I'd say I think the treasurer could do that job. I mean, they're really just paying the bills that the treasurer authorizes. So I think that's an interesting position. I'm not saying it isn't important, but I'm not sure it should be an elected position or really a separate position. The treasurer, I do think, is an important position, but I think that the strategy behind that position versus on a greater level attracting businesses is the difference. And I always see myself as, everybody says the banker and they think one thing. I look at banking, I look at going out, having a conversation with a business about what their needs are, and then finding a way to facilitate that need becoming a reality. So I like to think of myself almost as the guy who makes your vision a reality versus a numbers guy. And I think that has to understand with managing risk, and then also managing what the capabilities are, not only of that person, but what their vision has accomplished and whether that's going to be a success. So, in a sense, managing risk. And I think, that really is what we haven't done well. We elected a lot of people in all of the elections I've voted in Nevada that promised that economic development, but really never delivered on it, because I don't think they understood how to find those advantages that we have as a state and really utilize them to sell who we are. And that's what I think I can do.
Okay.
Well, John, here's honestly, I appreciate the fact that you're running. Like Steve said, I honestly, when Steve told me who was going to be on, I had never heard you before. I personally don't take that as a bad thing. I think sometimes we get so hung up into, you got to go to every Lincoln Day dinner, you got to go to every CCRP meeting, every state board meeting and all that stuff. So, and I appreciate the fact that people do that, because I feel like there's more information in those circles to see what's really going on throughout the state. But, so you touched on something that I would like you to expand on. Yes, you are exactly right. When it seems like and Steve and I have been interviewing candidates for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Everybody always says diversify the economy. Okay, that sounds great, and there's very few people average people that disagree with that. However, there's two very big interests in this state that I honestly don't believe are ever going to allow that to happen. That's the mining industry, and in the north, and then in the south, it's the casinos. So, and they have such a stronghold on the money, and politics takes a lot of money. How are you going to convince the casino industry or the mining industry that now we need to diversify from what we've been doing?
Well, I mean, luckily, I think the teachers did that for us when they, they've been pushing bills to tax those two industries significantly. It looks like at the moment that the bill to increase taxes on gaming won't end up being on the ballot, but that I think is still unclear. I know our current Secretary of State is appealing that decision. The reality is I think they're starting to feel the pressure that being the goose that lays the golden egg is also dangerous, and I think that they're more than willing to see a broadening of the base of who is bringing and creating value for Nevadans, and I believe. How
many people in the how many people? Like serious people in the casino industry have you talked to, and they've said that? Because I know somebody that knows a lot of people, a very influential person in this town, and the casino industry, from what I know, the casino industry is not interested in that. They feel like they're already being overburdened by, not only the shutdown that Sisolak did, but then also the increased room taxes and fees to build Allegiant Stadium, expand the convention center.
$2 billion projects.
Yeah. So how would you talk to, let's just say, a Frank Fertitta and say, hey, are you willing to pay more on taxes to diversify the economy?
Oh no, I think you misunderstood me. I'm saying.
I guess I did.
I was saying that the fact that we see continued pressure to increase taxes on them is exactly the reason why they want to see new industry come into the state.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah, creating more revenue to.
That creates the broadening of it. And so I think I do believe that both of those industries are going to be looking for ways to see how we get more industry in our state. That takes that load off of them, that expectation. And I think, mining is a great example. And I don't know if you just do politicians, but if you interview some of the other people.
We don't just do politics.
Oh, great. Tyree, who's the head of the Nevada Mining Association.
Tyree what?
Tyree.
Spit it out.
Blanking on his name.
Spit it out, John. You're almost there, John.
Can't think of it right now. Let's see if it comes to me. I'm hoping it comes to me. He's one of the people that I think gets the concept of talking about the verticalization of our mining industry. So much happens that we pull it out of the ground and it gets stuck on a truck and leaves our state. And that concept of being able to build out from there. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in that space, not just in, obviously a lot of what we see come out as precious metal, gold and silver, but as we really look to the MP Materials, which is a Nevada-based company, and looking at rare earths and going back through tailings, as well as starting to look at what lithium could be for our state, I think there's an opportunity there to really say, hey, we're not just going to encourage mining, but we're going to include that next level of refinement, and then ultimately manufacturing to get it into a state where you can do a battery with it, or whether it's going to however it's getting to consumer or business at the end of the day. Right. And I think that kind of verticalization could be a massive windfall for our state. The problem I see with that, and actually this kind of goes back to I think where you start, right? That's a great idea. How do you get there? More than anything, I think we have an opportunity in our state. When I graduated high school, there was like 500,000 people in the valley. Now we have 330,000 kids in our school district, and then another 130,000 that are in vocational, parochial, or homeschooled. And so we're creating almost what we had in the Valley when I was in high school, just in our kids. And so there's this potential workforce that if we educate correctly and give them pathways to careers that can be exponential for creating what the West Coast is in massive need of, right, which is skilled labor. And so I think that opportunity alone is going to be able to drive eyes of businesses and industry in what I think is a turning point for our economic nature in the whole West Coast, really, which is a struggle. And I think, if you get a business mind in there, someone that understands that aspect of, lending to lots of different people, creating those environments that allow risks to be the outcome, you can have great things happen for the state. So that's what I'd like to do, and I'm excited about it.
I want to go off topic a little bit.
Go for it.
That scar.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I was 5 years old. We had a family dog. I believe he was bit by a scorpion, and a black lab, believe it or not, and I was bit.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. Lucky he didn't get my eye, and I was lucky, and so.
Okay. Jim, you have anything else for Mr. Miller?
No, not
Other
any.
than that, there's 2 Millers running for lieutenant governor?
No, actually, you're not special on this one. I say it to all candidates, and it's not. It is seriously. I mean it. I've ran for office. Steve's run for office. Plenty of people that are running for office. We help certain individuals that are running for office. We've been doing this a long time. With Veterans of Politics, we're specific about, educating the public. But running for office is not easy. It's tough. The only thing that I would say is that maybe work on some name recognition, because when Steve sent that to me, I was like, another person running for lieutenant governor? So I would work on name recognition. Honestly, it seems like you're a very intelligent guy. Like you have some good ideas. I think you'd be good for the state. But at the end of the day, you got to get elected. And if people don't know who you are, you're not going to get elected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I am, like I said, actively working on making sure everybody in the state knows who I am.
And you got to understand something about this state. Is only the few votes for the many. So a lot of people stay home. The only ones that actually go to the voting booth are active people like us.
Oh.
So if we don't know who you are.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was born and raised here, so I know the state.
Right.
It's interesting to see as you travel around.
Yeah.
I'd say the varied engagement levels.
If I knew you,
yeah,
and you said to me, hey, I'm thinking about running for lieutenant governor one day, and I say, you know what?
Well, you
want to get involved 2 years before you file so people could know who you are, so you can make all kinds of connections, not just say, okay, I feel like running for lieutenant governor. You understand?
Yeah, I mean, I get the concept.
Not roll over one day and say, I think I'm going to go and put my name on the ballot.
I mean, that is to a certain extent what it was. Having a conversation at my family dinner table and making that decision.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's, planning it out wasn't in the cards this time. And so, I think we need more people to make the commitment because they're passionate and they have the ability. It's a shame that, we have so many people that stay in politics 17 or 18 years. And don't change the narrative.
Oh, yeah.
And do very little. And so, I get it, right? It's going to be a battle. But I'm willing for the fight, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is, and I'm gonna tell everybody I can in Nevada why I think I can do a great job, and that I'd be willing to step up and be governor, and who knows, maybe someday that's the next calling, if I can execute on what I say I'm going to do as lieutenant governor.
Okay. Do we cover everything you would like covered, Mr. Miller?
I'd love to know. You talked a little bit about emergency preparedness and how things were handled. In your opinion, do you think that
I'm not the one being interviewed.
Oh, come on, that's fair.
I'm not the one being interviewed. It's you.
All right.
Nobody going to go to the ballot box and look for my name because my name won't be.
Well, I think it's relevant to the question you asked. Do you think that the COVID? I'll have my answer, right?
Okay.
Do you think it's relevant? Do you think the COVID would have been considered, emergency situations that the lieutenant governor should have enacted?
Which part? The one that we didn't have a lieutenant governor for how long?
Well,
Nobody even knew she left.
Yeah, we had one initially.
Included, by the way.
I forgot who the lieutenant governor was.
Yeah.
I embarrassed myself in an
Because the
interview.
lieutenant governor wasn't involved in the state.
Yeah. Well, I guess
Since it was a global epidemic, I would probably say maybe yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
It was a global epidemic.
I think that we allowed way too much power to be placed in our governor, and I think the actions that took place were completely out of line with what we think of when we think of electing people to run our state, and it was a real shame, and it was disappointing. I think this is often the case, and this kind of goes back to that earlier comment I mentioned about that groupthink aspect, is that just because we're all Republicans, it's okay to disagree on certain aspects of how things get done, as long as we're willing to agree to a certain aspect of what needs to get done. And so, I look forward to having that conversation and being active, far more active going forward, because I realize just showing up to vote isn't enough to make sure that my kids stay Nevadans and have the opportunities that I had, and that's what I want.
All right, very good. Mr. Miller, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Great.
Could you look into the camera right there, and Mark's going to zoom in on you, and you tell the folks why they should go to the voting booth and vote for you and your point of contact.
My name's John Miller. I'm running for lieutenant governor. I believe that you should come and vote in the primary for me because I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a businessman, I'm an investor, and I want to be the inspirer for fostering Nevada's future. And I believe I know how to do that. You can go to johnmillerfornevada.com and you can find me there and look on the internet, Facebook as well, John Miller for Lieutenant Governor. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Folks, that's John Miller, candidate for Nevada's Lieutenant Governor. Make sure you do your homework, folks. Educate yourself on the candidates that are running for office. Don't look for a pretty name or a pretty face or somebody that talks a good game. Make sure that you do your investigation and look into the background of these candidates, because remember, this is how our country got screwed up in the first place. We just elect people that have a beautiful smile and know how to talk, and oh, that's a good guy. And then when it finally gets down to it, they just destroy this country. And veterans like us fought for this country, and we don't want to see it destroyed by some phony politicians. So make sure you do your homework. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics. Until next time.